It's a simple question, but it's kind of complicated. My guess is that when I ask that question, several faces might pop into your mind. The bravest person you know. Now, there are different types of bravery. There's physical bravery, moral, ethical bravery, interpersonal bravery, political bravery, spiritual bravery. What looks like bravery to me might look like something completely different to you. Who's the bravest person you know? I've known lots of brave people over the course of my life and career. Many of them faced terrifying odds. Many of them had few guarantees, faced financial stress, didn't have enough support. This morning, I'm thinking specifically of the parents of the newborns in the neonatal intensive care unit, or NICU. Neonatology is the medical care of premature infants and their families. And it was my privilege to serve as a spiritual care provider in the NICU and work with young parents. My very first patient was a little tiny newborn I'll call Angel. Angel was born at 23 weeks gestation. Now, 40 weeks is full term, so Angel was just a little over half-baked. She weighed 14 ounces. She needed help breathing. She needed help keeping herself warm, needed help taking in enough nutrition to survive. Angel's parents were not able to hold her or barely touch her for the first several weeks of her life because of the fragility of her skin. She lived in a temperature-controlled plexiglass box beside which her mom and dad sat day after day. Now, one day I was making my rounds early in the morning before Angel's parents had arrived, and I noticed her dad had placed his wedding band around her arm, her tiny stick of an arm. But that gesture was such a sign of hope, a symbol of the bond that her parents had already formed with her, despite her very grim prognosis. I was there the first day Angel and her parents were allowed to actually be together physically since her birth. She was now well enough to come out of her box and kangaroo with her mom and dad. The term kangaroo describes a tiny infant being rested on the heart, over the heart of the bare-chested parent, skin to skin, heart to heart. And kangarooing has been shown to provide real clinical benefit for parents and babies. Now, Angel's dad was a big barrel-chested farmer. Watching the nurses place his tiny daughter against his big hairy chest and then swaddle them in a warm blanket. Oh, sacred moment. Dad sobbed. Hospital staff and family members sobbed. We tried to pray, but we were all choked up. Angel survived. She learned to breathe on her own, keep herself warm. She weighed almost 4 pounds when she left the hospital, and she would be about 40 years old now. I want to acknowledge the fact that there are those of you here this morning who know this story all too well because you have had the NICU experience, and I would count you among the bravest people I know. Today's gospel offers 2 healing stories, but these are also 2 extraordinary examples of bravery. First, we're introduced to Jairus, leader of the synagogue in Capernaum. And after that big storm, he's among the first to meet Jesus on the shore, and he falls down and he begs Jesus to heal his little daughter. Now, perhaps it was desperation that compelled Jairus, who was a powerful, well-connected, respected man, to fall down and beg the man whom against he had probably spoken in the synagogue, this itinerant troublemaker. But we'll do anything for our children. Then we learn of another person who emerges from the crowd. And like Jairus' little daughter, this woman is also nameless. This woman needs healing for herself, but there's nobody there to advocate for her, no friends to carry her in on a mat or lower her through the roof so Jesus can see her. The woman with the issue of blood, as she is described in some translations, has been bleeding for 12 years. Now, this was likely a gynecologic issue related to her menstrual cycle. She had tried everything to get better, but her condition, after visiting several physicians, had only gotten worse. She had no money. She was considered culturally and religiously unclean, untouchable, invisible, and she was also likely to be barren in a culture where childbearing determined the value of the woman. So as Jesus is going to Jairus' home, he feels this energy go out of him. This woman with the issue of blood has audaciously touched his cloak, and this was also against the cultural mores of the day. But she doesn't approach Jesus with the intention of falling before him or even speaking to him. It seems that all she wants is to touch his cloak and then maybe slip away unnoticed, yet healed. Her plan may have been to ask for healing in a quiet, inconspicuous, small way, likely conditioned by what she'd been told to believe about herself. Now, what do you think Jesus means when he says, "Your faith has saved you," or "Your faith has made you well"? Faith in him? Faith in his divinity? Faith in his ability to heal? Faith in the possibility of healing? We're used to listening to these stories as miracle healing stories, and they are. But Jairus was brave. The woman with the issue of blood was brave. Both were in desperate need of healing, but one would expect neither Jairus nor the woman to ask for help given their status. Jairus, a privileged, powerful man; the woman, a penniless, sick outcast. Both were brave to reach out. Both were brave to consider themselves worthy of hope. Hope that his 12-year-old daughter would live, hope that her 12-year bleeding would stop. But perhaps there's another miracle in this story. A miracle about being brave enough to be reliant. Reliance is hard. It goes against cultural norms which prize independence and strength and self-sufficiency and self-determination. It's hard to risk the appearance of weakness. It's hard sometimes to ask for help or to even believe that we're worthy of help. In her book, My Theology, An Evolving God, An Evolving Purpose, An Evolving World, Sister Joan Chittister writes, "God is the mystery nobody wants. What people want from God is not mystery, but certainty, the very element in ourselves that binds itself so often to making sure that nothing ever changes, that tomorrow never comes." It's hard to decide to rely on, as Chittister puts it, the mystery that nobody wants, to ease our grip on certitude and the need for certainty. But the gospel offers two stellar examples of reliance on that mystery. Motivated by his love for his daughter, it's Jairus who steps outside the security of his social and religious position, and motivated perhaps by the belief that she was worthy of being healed of a religiously and culturally destructive ailment, and that this guy could heal her, the woman with the issue of blood reaches out. In her book, How We Learn to Be Brave, Bishop Marianne Budde writes, "The courage to be brave when it matters most requires a lifetime of small decisions." Perhaps the courage it takes to be brave enough to be reliant also requires a lifetime of small decisions. What motivates us to be brave? To step outside of our security, to reach out against convention? What motivates us to be brave enough to believe that we are loved without ceasing? Brave enough to believe that God's hope for us is wholeness and reconciliation and healing. brave enough to believe that we can rely on God. Perhaps a lifetime of small decisions. Earlier, I described the bravery of the parents of premature infants in the NICU, and I want to conclude this morning by briefly sharing the story of another group of parents as Pride Month draws to a close. I want to share an excerpt from a book called Coming Out Together by Christina and Jeannie Cabot. In their introduction, they write, "The parents, families, and friends of lesbians and gays, better known as PFLAG, from Red Wing, Minnesota, are a band of regular folk who, with courage and grace, face down fear, ignorance, prejudice, and their own personal demons to advocate acceptance and equality for their LGBTQ children. Most of the members' children declared their sexual identities in the 1980s and early 90s. Red Wing was a conservative community. Kids didn't come out, and their parents certainly didn't want to tell others. The risk of rejection, ostracization, bullying, violence, and altogether abusive reactions from their peers was just too great. And sadly, their LGBTQ children did not find welcome and safety in their faith communities, and most of these families left their churches. But gradually, parents began to find one another. A whisper here and there, a friend who knew a friend. Finally, the Red Wingers decided to form their PFLAG chapter in 1994. Over the next 30 years, Red Wing PFLAG would hold seminars, march on the Capitol, march in the Pride Parade, give out words of affirmation and free hugs, challenge school policies, and continue their tireless advocacy in countless ways. What does it mean to parent an LGBTQ child? According to the PFLAG parents, it takes teaching, learning, guidance, acceptance, laughter, tears, work, worries, frustration, humility, irrepressible love, and the fierce desire to protect their offspring. And these parents learned that they had to come out too. This is a group of brave souls. In closing, I want to read a short poem written by one of the PFLAG parents entitled How to Say by Karen Herseth Wee. I don't know how to say this. You are not what I expected. Your father and I came together at a particular moment in our knowing. And from deep inside me, you already were made in the image of the great God who loves you more than I do. And that's saying something. Made in my image too, of course, and your father's, those young years when you looked like him, the tomboy ones, when you walked like me. And now, a woman on course among careless teachings and wrong-headed ones, you make your way all the while, reaching a hand back to me. I'll keep up, but I'm not as young as you, nor as urgent. But I'm coming, dear heart. Don't get out of sight. I'm coming, and I will bring others. How brave are you?